Alright, I'm back with the Destiny 2 video, and this time I wanted to talk about something that caught my eye in the most recent TWAB. It was not one of the 85 million different changes they're making to abilities, but it was something related to what I've been talking about recently with all of Destiny kind of making its way off of Game Pass this December when the 30th anniversary patch launches. Before, we learned it was Beyond Light that would be removed, and that meant, since stasis is attached to that, if you are a person who bought or didn't buy Beyond Light and just played it on Xbox Game Pass, you'd be losing access to stasis unless you bought it on Xbox. But they are also removing Shadowkeep and Forsaken. And there's a list in the TWAB of things that you will lose when all of these expansions are taken offline, or what you will lose unless you rebuy them. And on the list is the middle tree supers for each subclass. And I was like, wait, okay, so those arrived in Forsaken, but at the same time, Forsaken being pulled off Game Pass didn't seem like that big of a deal, because at that exact moment, Forsaken is going free on all platforms because they are sunsetting the campaign and the Tangled Shore. So they were giving people like 3 free months to play Forsaken, and before cutting out the campaign in Tangled Shore, and then they're leaving the Dreaming City and the raid and the dungeon in place. So this was confusing to me. So I'm like, okay, wait, they're just gonna like remove the middle tree subclasses, and then when people download Forsaken for free, then they'll get them back. Like, is that how it's gonna work? Turns out I've been missing something rather big this entire time. So we can chalk this up to like me being somewhat of an idiot or someone who missed something, but if I missed this, I know there are at least some other people that missed this. And this was the first time I had heard of something called the Forsaken Pack. This was apparently talked about a long time ago. Let me see when this article was written. I have like a PC Games End article here. Why don't they put the date on things? Okay, it was this early October, so this is a while ago that we kind of heard about what was going to be vaulted and things like that. And then in describing that, they talked about, as of December 7th, a new Forsaken Pack will be available that includes access to Last Wish, Shattered Throne, as well as the expansion's exotics for players who haven't previously picked up the DLC. And that is in conjunction with what they said in the TWAB, which is they were like altering the prices of some of the expansions going forward. So what I have missed here is, it's not that Forsaken is being made free for 3 months, it's that the Forsaken campaign is being made free for 3 months. So I thought finally, they were just going to make Forsaken free for all players, and that was going to be kind of the concession to like, okay, we're cutting out half of it, but like the Forsaken stuff in general is free, and that would include like Dreaming City stuff and the raid and the Shattered Throne, but it does not contain that. So even though they are removing half of it, they are still going to be selling like the remaining pieces of Forsaken, which apparently includes the Last Wish raid, Shattered Throne dungeon, the middle tree subclasses for each class, and the exotics that you get that were specific to that expansion. And I'm just like so frustrated by this, because like I made that video a couple days ago where I was talking about how I want them to shift over to kind of a rolling system where after a year or two, the kind of oldest expansion or the oldest 2 expansions or whatever is made free. And so that becomes kind of a well of free content that new players can have access to. Instead, what I find out is that they are splintering things even further. So it's not just that there are like really specific big expansions. So like there's Beyond Light and Shadowkeep, and those are big expansions you pay for. But now, because of content vaulting, they're not like making Forsaken free. They are chopping it into an even tinier piece, which includes, you know, some pretty heavily buffed middle tree subclasses. Like they're about to crazily buff middle tree Voidwalker in this new patch here for PvE, and that is being sold separately. Is like, I assume the Forsaken pack is probably going to be, I would say, 15 to $20 is my guess, because if Forsaken was $40 originally, if they're taking the campaign out, I guess that's the majority of it. I mean, like at baseline, it's probably at least $10. But like, it's not really even the price. It's the fact that they're splintering the audience again, when like they need to be doing everything possible to create like a cohesive package for this game. Like, it is mind-numbing to try and get new players into the game at this point, and to tell them like what they actually have access to for free. And you would think the more content they add to the game on the other end, the more stuff they could make free. Instead, what they're doing is they're chopping some of the stuff out for content bolting, and then the stuff that remains, they're not making free. So in theory, I've been assuming this whole time that Last Wish and Shattered Throne would become free dungeons, because Forsaken came out, what, 3 years ago or something? Like, it has been a ridiculously long time where that has been out. So I assumed that the, quote, good news of this was like, okay, at least, New Light players are going to get access to that stuff. But I find that not only is that still going to be paywalled, but even the middle tree subclasses attached to that expansion are still going to be paywalled. So now we have a different kind of bundle that is not just an expansion walling off some part of subclasses, and then another full expansion walling off stasis. And like, you get the point I'm trying to make here, right? Like, it is way too convoluted. Like, already between, there's seasons and then there's expansions, but then we're adding another category into this, which is just like, I don't even know what to call it. It's just random crap. Like, now we have the Forsaken pack, which is like the random crap scraps of the Forsaken expansion. And now we are starting something that seems like it will probably be a trend, the 20th anniversary or 30th anniversary stuff, which like may be fun and maybe separate, and yet it is $25 standalone content that is walling off a dungeon and a whole bunch of armor sets and I think a couple exotics at least. And that is like a new type of thing they're doing now, kind of splintering the player base even further. So like, if you want to log on with your friend, it's not just like they have to be current with the last expansion. It's like, oh, you didn't buy the anniversary pack, like you're missing this dungeon, or you didn't buy the Forsaken pack, we can't run this raid, or you can't use this exotic or this subclass that we need you to do for this segment. Like, I can't imagine coming into this as a new player and seeing all this put in front of you and like having any clue what to do, or feeling like you're spending a good amount of money. I mean, maybe they're going to come up with some sort of cohesive bundle that is less confusing than what is being laid out here. Like, technically, this is one of the arguments I was making, is like, I think they can make Forsaken and Shadowkeep, all of that stuff free at this point, given the age of it, and then going forward, Beyond Light costs as much as Beyond Light costs, and like that, they're still selling that. And then theoretically, when the Witch Queen rolls over, Beyond Light goes free, and then people have to pay for Witch Queen and seasonal stuff to stay current. That is still, at baseline, $100 a year for everything over that year span. That, in this case, that includes the 30th anniversary stuff. $100 a year is pretty much a subscription MMO price, more or less, close to it. And then, of course, they still have bazillions of microtransactions, hundreds of dollars of season worth of stuff in the Eververse store, multiple armor sets per class, per season, ornaments for everything, like endless amount of stuff they're selling in the Eververse store, still selling transmog, like, against my wishes. So, like, there's plenty of revenue streams, but I think they are fragmenting themselves way, way, way too much in terms of, like, what they are offering. And I think this would be a little more bearable if the New Light stuff was the way New Light used to be. I think if we still had the Red War campaign and, like, at least the two DLCs of content after that as, like, the pretty chunky intro of, like, free stuff you can do in Destiny before you start running into the paywall, I think that would be one thing. Instead, like, that is completely evaporated and been replaced by exactly nothing. Very minor things. So now we have the Shahan intro mission, which is probably the worst mission chain in Destiny history. And then we have stuff like you can access the playlists and you can run one raid, Vault of Glass, and you can run one dungeon, Prophecy, and more or less that's it. Like, you can go to all the destinations, you just can't do any of the missions there. But under a rolling system, you would have old campaigns to run, you would have stuff like that. In this case, Forsaken is being sunset, so you can't do that. But under my idea, this Forsaken would have been free like 2 years ago, and then free-to-play players would have been onboarded with Forsaken, which is a really good campaign. That is a kind of a good introduction to the game, maybe not story-wise, because you're revenging someone who you've met 30 seconds ago, as opposed to like 5 years ago, but it is still a cohesive campaign. And to see them just splintering things further, and like after all this time where I've been saying like they should make Forsaken free for so long, to realize that it's just they're making the campaign missions free for 3 months, and then they're still selling the remaining chunks of Forsaken as a separate thing is just like too much for me to handle. Like, I want Bungie to be successful and make revenue. There's nothing more than I want than to have, Destiny be sustainable and to be able to generate revenue, and yet I think they are really messing up this end of the system. Like we can debate, the cost of expansions, cost of season passes and things like that, or even the 30th anniversary event and microtransactions. But like, what they are doing with old content is incoherent to me, and if it's incoherent to me, I know it is like borderline impossible for new players to want to deal with. And I just don't think that this is the right way forward here. If they don't, maybe my rolling idea is too generous, I'm giving away too much content, but like at this point, I do not think it is unreasonable to say that the remaining 30% of Forsaken that they are letting stick around, the Dreaming City stuff, just be made free to play, as opposed to trying to like squeeze the last bit of, potential money out of it with some $10-$20 Forsaken pack or something. Like, I do not think this is healthy for the game overall or for the player base, and it makes it very, very hard to recommend in a way that Destiny did not used to be back when there was so much more free content and it was so much easier to onboard people. That era only lasted like, I don't know, a year before they cut everything with vaulting, but like, even if we're not pushing back against vaulting anymore, even if vaulting is like a thing we cannot avoid, like this is only making things worse, and I was hoping they would do some other things to kind of offset the necessity of vaulting, but instead they're going kind of the extra mile and trying to figure out ways to charge, still charge for every old bit of content more or less, and then never adding anything significant to the free pile outside of a raid a year or a dungeon a year or something like that. I do not think this is the right path forward. I even more so think this like than I did a couple days ago, because I didn't understand what the Forsaken pack was. We don't know the pricing on it. Again, we don't know. Maybe Shadowkeep's price is dropping too. Maybe Beyond Light's price is dropping. But like, I don't know. I think something needs to change with the system, and it needs to be kind of more clear cut as to how long content will be paid, how long it will be free, not cutting it into pieces and selling it individually, and then in conjunction with things being vaulted. I would hope things that are vaulted in the future are things that have been made free already for a long time, and we don't get into the situation again where it's like, okay, quick, you have 3 months to beat the Forsaken campaign, where we listed it for free before it's gone forever. Like, that's a weird system, and if they keep doing that, it's not going to be great. So I'm not a fan of this. I will look for this pricing information, but I was very bummed to kind of finally figure this out. Again, this is not news. Apparently, this has been known for at least a month and a half or so. So maybe I'm just catching up with everyone, but don't love it. And I really want to see this more streamlined for kind of the overall health of the game. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you guys soon.